Hey guys, this is Nick Christopher from Mob Tales. Thank you for tuning in again. Definitely appreciate it. Today I have an interesting guest who is involved with the original Boston Mob Tour, Joe Marino. Joe, thank you a lot for tuning in and coming on the show.
Okay, thank you. Thank you so much for having us.
Oh, my pleasure. How's Michael, by the way?
Good. He's doing that pretty good. I thought maybe he might be on, but it's okay. Yeah, he's doing very well. Thank you. Doing good.
Okay, cool. Well, my first, just to get a little people, familiar with what you do. There is in America, there's a lot of different cities. There's many tours. New York, Boston. I think there's one in Philly. I think in Chicago. And each one of them has their own special, subject area. New York, of course, covers over 5 families. Philly got the Scarfo crew. Chicago, of course, the outfit. And then in Boston, of course, it's to me, the Boston is a little more unique, only because even though New York has a lot to talk about, Boston's got the Irish guys, and then you got the Italian guys. You got the North End, and then you got the South Side. You got Southie.
That's correct.
Of course, a lot of people are familiar with Whitey Bulger and the John Connolly story and that whole big mess. So to give us a little bit of a rundown of, what the Boston Mob Tour offers that may be different than some of the other ones.
Okay, well, first off, it's not a big, huge tour. We have an SUV that actually picks you up, so it's much more personal. You get 5, 6 people in there, and with the music playing, so you feel very nice, almost like a family tour, believe it or not, if you can call it that. So that's number one. And it and it starts and it goes through basically in the synopsis of it goes through Southie and the North End, but it's talked about a lot of things that happened within the city, at least since the 50s.
Oh,
further.
so it covers the 50s to like about what time? Like 2000s?
Yeah, pretty much up to now, without saying too much.
Okay, that makes sense. If I understand, you're from Boston. You're from the area.
Yes, I am. I'm right from the inner city of Boston, and so I know, pretty much what's going on. And I have friends in, Southie, also Dorchester, which is the other side of the tracks for us Italians. So
yeah. Well, that being the case, before I get into more details about the tour, what was your how did you get involved in this? Like, were you always sort of like a mob enthusiast, or was it just something that you decided to work on?
well, years ago when I was younger, my father's from the north end of Boston, and I'm from East Boston, which are two very um, mob hotbeds back in the day. So the North End in East Boston, that's where La Cosa Nostra, in essence, the soul was. So I would go back and forth from both neighborhoods, and I knew them both very well. So up until the age of about 23, 22, that's in my mind what I wanted to be, a gangster. Until I started to really realize we hit a guy out from Brooklyn, actually, at 22 years old. Somebody got a call up here, said, hide this guy out. And we hit him out. Now, this guy was a real crackpot. And I learned quickly that, I didn't want to have my life go this way. So I made a decision at about 24, 25 to stop that mindset. And I cut off all mental ties with it. I had to, otherwise nothing was going to happen. Good was going to happen.
Right. So, okay. All right. So it's sort of like me, more or less. I was 21 at the time, and that's when I walked away from it, so to speak. So we both had kind of somewhat similar experiences or being around guys like that,
Yeah,
in that nature. So that's pretty cool. Um, so being that the case, so so you're because of your knowledge and your background, this kind of fit. You
right,
know,
right,
you're a perfect fit for it because you know what it's about pretty much.
correct.
Um, well, so it's when did the original Boston Mom Tour? When did it originally start? When was the beginning?
It started last year, almost about a year ago. I helped Michael with the filming because I'm a filmmaker now. So I help him, do the video of it, and which is initially a 45-minute video that you get to look at before you take the tour. So you get an idea of La Cosa Nostra and the Winter Hill Gang and the whole thing. So I helped him with that, and we did it together, and also working on the route. Uh, going through Southie with some of my Irish friends who helped me out to have some stories that you only know if you grew up in Southie. You know, so that basically was the genesis of that. It's been a good year, and um, Google. I think it's got 5 stars on every Google hit. Everybody who's gone on it, they just love it. So
So prior to this, there wasn't. You're the first Boston Mob Tour. I don't think there was one before that, or was there?
I know people would walk around and kind of show a little bit. So there was a couple of things, but this one here, there was uh, for lack of a better word, the people who they know exactly what went on in the underworld back in the day. So it wasn't hearsay; it was first person.
Okay. So no thanks. So you guys are the original. I mean, there was no other tour prior to you.
Correct, correct.
Okay, that's pretty nice. All right, that's good. That makes it even more interesting.
Yeah,
Um, being the case that you were going through these certain neighborhoods, like Southie, for example, which we know is a very, even to this day, I think, is a very isolated kind of like they protect their own, and
yeah,
it's a neighborhood that if you're like a non-Irish guy, they'll pick you out from like easily. You know, you stand
correct, exactly.
is so being that the case and how isolated and how kind of secretive they were, um, was it, did you find any kind of pushback when you were giving the tour in that area?
Not like it would have been if it was, say, 20 or 30 years ago. Southie become like the whole city of Boston, whether it's Eastie, Southie, the North End, Charlestown, townies, has become very gentrified and very expensive. When I grew up in the 60s, 70s, and 80s in Boston, you only lived there because you couldn't get out. I
Yeah.
was going to swear, but that's why you lived there, because you were too poor to leave. Or your family, you might have lucked out and had a four-family house or whatever, and you live with your whole family. But most of the people who were there, it was poor. It was in essence, Southie, the same thing. It was a shithole. Excuse the language.
Well, no, I know it was a tough area. That's what made to make the guys so people so tough.
Right.
So with that, so being all right, so that'd be the Southie. Now the North End, which I know is not really a stronghold anymore, since
Right.
the Giulios all went away. Back after the Barboza trial and all that
Yeah.
went on. After now the North End, of course, is like I said, is not as a power base as it was before. So
Right.
I'm assuming that was a little bit easier to,
Right.
make things
Correct.
happen, so to speak.
I mean, if you just think about it in geographical terms, the North End and East Boston were Italiano, and the Irish were Charlestown and Southie. So, because of the water, Boston is very segregated, and it always was a segregated city. I mean, I grew up with busing also, which made it even more segregated in the 70s.
Mhm.
So, but the North End was a stronghold along with East Boston, for La Cosa Nostra, especially, yeah.
Yeah,
And Charlestown, the tip of Charlestown, which is Somerville, um, it was um, it was the Winter Hill Gang, basically.
right. Hmm. That was the one, that's when, Whitey Bulger was a member of Winter Hill.
Correct.
After the leader was, I think was, I can't remember his name right now for the life of
It
me.
was, Howie Winter.
Howie Winter, that's it.
And before him was Buddy McLean.
Right. Yeah, that's right, that's when they had the, McLean and McClellan wars.
McLaughlin was, that's right,
Right,
in the 60s, yeah.
in the
Yeah,
sixties, yeah, that was prior to Whitey Bulger even becoming a name, at that point.
correct. It was a,
Uh,
I
yeah.
was young, but it was a bad time. It was, people were dropping left and right. I have the Life magazine, which it has only 40 guys who got killed. I think 60 got killed totally, and I'm not sure. I don't think anybody ever went to jail. So,
Yeah, I know Buddy McLean, I think his brother, or was it himself or his brother, was shot outside of his house.
right.
If I remember correctly, yes.
Right.
Yeah, that was a pretty wild time. Those two Irish crews were trying to, it was over something stupid too. The whole thing started over some woman, I think.
Yeah,
And
I
they
think it was
blew
because of
up.
Alex Petricone, um, who became Mo Green of The Godfather. Alex Rocco
Hmm.
beat up, I think it was Punchy McLaughlin in Salisbury Beach, and that started the beef
Right.
because of Mo Green. God rest his soul.
Yeah, right. That crazy? That's
Yeah.
just a thought. Do you guys go by places like the, Triple O's and Blackfriar?
Yes.
You do?
Yes.
Oh,
Yes. Yes. We'll go by Blackfire a little bit. We'll talk about it because it's a little bit to the right of where we're going. But we do go by Triple O's, which is a nice, beautiful restaurant now. We go by also a place called the Rabbit Inn, which in Southie back in the day were, a lower level, say Triple O's.
mm-hmm.
So, but you had, I can remember the first time going to Southie at 18 years old. I couldn't believe how many bars there are. I felt like it was an island. For an Italian kid, it was, oh my God, I got to get out of here. These people are crazy, to put bars. But yeah, so we go through all Southie, and we show a little bit of history too, about Bussin, because Bussin was big, um, in South Boston, and we go by the houses that the guys lived at. So we try to give it a decent tour and people really feel it, I think.
Well, from what I understand, I mean, the Boston Bob is it's a very interesting history, and it's very rich. I mean, there's so much you can talk about. Um, how long is the tour itself?
The tours, like New York, depending upon traffic, it could go an hour and 15 minutes, an hour and a half. Then you get, some percentages off in several restaurants in the North End. Um, and they'll drop you, they pick you up at New England Aquarium, which is right near the North End. Uh, and then it takes you to Southie first, and then into the North End, and shows you all, where Jerry and Julo had his restaurant and where they lived and all kind of stuff.
Okay. Well, I mean, like I said, it's such a rich history, and there's so much more, so much to talk about. I mean, Whitey Bulger alone, you could take a whole freaking week just talking about him.
You're right.
And
You're right. You're right.
the case with him, with getting involved with Winter Hill, then getting involved with John Connolly when he was exposing Julio crew, and they were able to place the bugs in his headquarters. I mean, that alone is like could take forever.
Yeah.
How are you able to break all that stuff up in just in the short time that you have the tour?
Well, you really try to look at it objectively. I mean, I remember when Whitey was around, although he was in Southie. Um, but again, it's gotten so gentrified, and we try to make people really feel, if there were spotters in the corner driving on a certain street and they would check your plate numbers, just to make sure you weren't, somebody trying to, whack him off the head with a ball peen hammer or something. So I really try to give him the feel of or what it was like. Um, I mean, because as you know, when you live it every day, you're in constant hypervigilance. And even try to show them, how somebody might be in a restaurant. They really can't eat normally because they're always vigilant, just in case somebody's after them or to kill them or something. So it's always it's in essence a hypervigilant tour.
Okay.
That makes you feel it.
Oh, awesome. All right. Like you said, I mean, I did visit the website and I took a look. It looks very interesting. If I'm ever in Boston, I'd love to check it out, even though I know everything already.
Yeah, well, it'd be great to have you. It'd be great to have, really.
But like, do you also cover? I know we talked about it, Julio and Whitey Bulger. Then you got like Larry Zanino, who was
Yeah.
a big time. He was a major factor,
Major.
especially with Barboza.
Yeah, I was in the nightlight in November of '66. I was 9 years old in the afternoon playing pinball with my buddy Anthony. His uncle ran it. And that night they killed Barboza's two henchmen, Tommy
Yeah.
the Prisco and Arthur Brazos. I was in the nightlight that day. As a young boy, I mean, what do I know, right? Just a stupid, goofy kid. But that night they killed him.
Yeah, they killed Artie. Yeah, Artie Brazos, who was actually a Greek guy that was under Barboza. And I think it was Canesso, I think, if I remember the last name. I know it's with a C. I'm trying to remember the name. But
Well, Tommy DePrisco?
DePrisco, that's it.
Tommy DePrisco, yes.
And they went there, they went there to collect some. Larry promised them they'd give him some money so they could get Barboza out of prison on bail. And they were collecting funds, and then it was all scam. He went in there, they whacked them both.
They whacked them up, that's correct.
Yeah. So you also cover the nightlight incident.
We go right by the nightly light. Then it was called 416 Lounge, and then after that it was called One of by Land, Two of by Sea. And obviously the location's still there, but it's now I think condominiums and stuff. But it's right off of Hanover Street, which we show the people, and they could get a feel of. I remember Joe Barboza in East Boston when I was a young kid, and I always thought he looked kind of like apish because he had these long arms, really big upper body, but
Yeah. That's why they called him the animal.
he was not a good guy.
Yeah, he was a psycho, no doubt. Do you also cover a little bit about Bulger's brother, who was a senator?
Yes.
You do cover a little bit of that, okay.
Yeah, we go by the house in essence, to show you where Billy lived. I believe they still live there, but it was just driving by and showing that right next door to him lived Stephen Flemmy, literally right next door. And I believe in the Congress, when Billy went to Congress, he says, "I'm not sure if I ever remember Stephen that well." I mean, no, he only lived next door to him. He doesn't really know him that. So again, it's thickly settled, and they're still there. And I think I heard, although I don't know, that Billy might have Alzheimer's and stuff. I don't know, but he was actually a very smart man and very funny. Believe it or not, they'd have at St. Patty's Day, they have the roast similar to the old Dean Martin roast, and it was very, very funny. He could have been a comedian in his own right.
Wow. When you do these tours, I'm wondering, do you ever get a lot of like questions? Oh, what about this and what about that? Or do you ever get like questions sometimes you can't even answer? Not because you didn't know, but you're afraid to answer.
Yeah,
You
well,
ever-
I try not to mention any name. We try not to mention any names. People who might be still alive and stuff. I won't. But anything we really say is history. It's in the books. It's not anything we're telling out of school. So we're not doing it to get anybody in trouble. Just showing them, okay, here was the triple O's. Was it a dangerous place? Yeah. I mean,
That's for sure.
I mean, you know, the same thing in New York, in the Bronx or in Brooklyn. You know, there were bars that you didn't go in with your family.
I wouldn't go there, that's for sure. Uh,
No.
but it's besides the Italians and the Irish. I mean, do you cover anything else? Any other groups in? I mean, of course, we know mob tours. Specifically, we think of, Italian and Irish. Of course, there was some Greeks. There was also the Chinese.
Right, Chinese. Yes, we talk a little about the Chinese too, and because Chinatown is still very big. Well, not to compare to New York, but Chinatown is still very segregated, and they're very, very closed. We talk about the killings in '96 on the Ellen Street. I think they just whacked out 6 people, and only one guy got caught. And again, it's very close society, so we don't know a lot that's going on. Similar to back in the day, you didn't know a lot that's going on in La Cosa Nostra with the Chinese or the triads, or it's probably even worse because you got a big language barrier. And again, we have a Chinatown. We go right by it, and we talk a little about the Jewish mob, even in New York, talking about Meyer Lansky and Lucky Luciano.
Mm-hmm. Well, in reference to that, when you go to different neighborhoods, when, with a lack of a bit, like you mentioned the Chinese. Now, when people would ever ask you of any other ethnic groups in the current time, like say you take tours now, do they ever? I'm sure there are probably questions. Oh, what are they doing now? Are they still around? Do you ever get something like that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I'm not mentally involved in it anymore because, I'm 66 years old, and that was another world. But you just got to look in the streets and see how much drugs are around, how much fentanyl's around, how much heroin's around. It's coming from somewhere, and somebody's giving it to somebody.
Right.
Um, whether it's the blacks, is Spanish or Dominican Republic. Uh, every ethnic group has somebody. Um, I just, I feel, when the Italian La Cosa Nostra was huge, it was because it was organized. I think Angiulo's line was, if it's, it doesn't pay to commit crime unless it's organized.
True.
And I feel to this day, if you're not organized, you're going to get caught. You're going to probably get caught anyway, but the rats,
Eventually.
just a matter of time.
Yeah. Well, your tours now have been around for like over a year now. And for what you have currently, which I'm sure is very good, and I'm very interested in checking it out. Is there anything that you would like to add to it that you think might make it better?
Obviously, Boston, Eastie, which you had some really interesting characters coming from East Boston, some really hard-edged La Cosa Nostra members. Charlestown, which is just a world in its own. One square mile of a code of silence, which obviously Charlestown is very gentrified now, but it would be kind of neat to go through those areas too, because there's a lot of history in Charlestown and Eastie. Most people think of the North End and Southie, but Charlestown and Eastie are two real hotbeds for Irish and an Italian mob.
Well, there's one person I'm sure you mentioned his name. I'm not sure if you do. We can mention it because he passed away. The one who was really and truly in charge of Boston was New England boss Ray Patriarca.
That's correct. That's
Now,
correct.
I'm not sure if you bring his name up at all, if that, because it is connected.
Yeah,
And Charleston, you mentioned he had a strong hold on Charleston, Patriarca. So, and then later his son, but his son didn't last, obviously. So I'm wondering if you mentioned his name as well.
Yeah, yeah, I think we do a little bit because, you Mr. Patriarca had, he ran things. He ran things with an iron fist, and he was very, schooled at all the cause and Austin. I mean, that's old world, hard edge thinking, which, was very black and white. It was, a lot of people respect him because, in that field, he was a good man.
Yeah, well, he's the one who actually put Jerry in he put Jerry in his spot. He gave him
Correct.
He made him boss of Boston.
Correct.
In the late '60s, early '70s, around there somewhere. So yeah, he was a major tool
Major.
in the Boston area. A lot of people don't know that. A lot of people think that, oh, it's Jerry and Julio and that's it. Nah.
Raymond Patriarca was the capo tutti capo. He was the man.
That's for sure. I mean,
Yeah.
there was another gentleman that is, of course, no longer part of the life, and he was a bit of a player in Boston, and I'm sure you know his name, Bobby Luisi.
Yes.
And he was a bit of a big effect in the Boston area
Yep.
for in the late around the '80s, around that time period. So I'm not sure if you bring him up. I'm not sure because I mean he wasn't huge or anything, but he was a bit of a player.
Right. No, we basically talk about, stuff that went on. It started, back in the early 1900s, and in essence, after Jerry passed away, or after Jerry um, got convicted, we talk a little bit about Whitey. So it kind of pretty much stops there, in essence.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. Well, like I said, I definitely would one of these days come to Boston. I definitely love to check it out. It sounds very interesting. And oh, by the way, when you do the tour, do you do any kind of like videos in the in the car, whatever, in the do you do anything like that?
Yeah. Well, they have iPads in which you can scroll through and see the pictures of,
Oh, okay.
okay, this is how Triple O's looked. This is how, Jerry Angelo's
Oh, that's smart.
Francesco's looked, before it was all done. Not that it's called Ward 8 now, I believe. Uh, so you can actually see, this is how some young Southie kids living in the projects looked in the late '70s, with that worn out look at age 12 years old. You already can tell they're pissed off. And, it only
That's
adds up.
smart because you're giving them a visual.
Yeah.
I mean, of course, what the places look like today and what they're like, they're totally different, obviously. They look nothing alike. But giving them that visual, that's a pretty interesting idea.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, after the tour is done, do they leave with anything? Do you give them a little bit of a,
Yeah. They get their button, it's actually, a little hook on a button. So they in essence have their button. Uh, then there's merchandise there you can buy. They get obviously the cards and stuff. So they feel very, um, well. They're treated very well as they leave. So they get the buttons. They can buy scally caps. They can buy some of the Mobster Tour shirts. Um, so so there's a few things they get. And the pictures, they also get pictures of themselves that are taken prior to and sometimes after the tour.
oh, okay. Well, one last question I want to ask now that I think about it. On your tour, have you ever had any ex-wise guy come on the tour, maybe talk to the people? Do you have anything like that? Have you ever done that?
And we could probably get them, but no, because we try to just keep it above board right now.
Okay.
Uh, you know, if they walk around, again, I'm sure they'll probably see them. We're not going to point them out, but
That's funny.
won't point them
Well,
out. But
awesome. Well, look, thank you, Joe. I really appreciate you coming on. It was interesting information, and
okay.
I wish you and Mike a lot of luck. And hope everything goes well. Hope you guys can go to take it as far as you can.
All right, thank you, Nick, and come on down. The water's fine. Come to Boston.
Yeah, well, I hope so. We ain't that far, so hopefully I can make it.
All right, thank you so much.
No problem, Joe. Thank you very much.
Okay, bye-bye.
Bye-bye. Thanks, guys, for tuning in. This is Nick Christopher with Mob Tales. Hope you enjoyed the show. Please tune in next time. And please like, subscribe, share, leave a comment. We definitely appreciate it. Take care, guys.